Hey folks, thanks for stopping by Kaiser's Castle. Today, me and Georgios are going to first he'll do a reading on it and sit down on my big orange couch and grab yourself a coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation. And Georgios today is going to give you the reading of the Bugulation. And what number Bugulation is this today, Georgios?
I think it's Galatians chapter 14, version Echo. And on this day, it came to pass that a firestorm from the sky killed the general and was met with great and furious anger from the left and those defending Iran. Because in those days, the liberal left has lost their freaking minds. Shows should be written, shows should be
I
done.
agree wholeheartedly. That was a good synopsis of it. As everybody knows by this time, Qasim Soleimani he's assumed room temperature. I've got his Wikipedia up for you guys to look at, and I ran across some photos somehow, somewhere. And I've tried to obscure them, so this may or may not go on to YouTube. It will definitely go on to Library or BitChute. They were pretty graphic, so just some forewarning before I show them. But it says in the Wikipedia that reportedly he died on the 3rd of January 2020. Let me tell you, folks, it wasn't reportedly, it was factually. And there is his wreckage. I'm now showing his wreckage. Now, I've had a problem with this for a while. That, people vilifying him as a terrorist. Here's what I'll say. He was a military general, whether we like it or not, of a nation state. The laws of land warfare are in effect, but we also have laws over here that supersede that. Has he sponsored terrorism with the Quds Force? Did he import the EFPs, which Georgios and I have both seen in full effect in Iraq and Afghanistan against our military people? Yes, he has. That's what he's supposed to do. They are not friendly nation. But me and Georgios were talking earlier about a movie that happened years ago, and it was called Peacekeeper. And in that movie, in the square, there's a Russian guy that gets out of his car. They're friends, but, they're enemies also. Soviets. The Soviet era was still around, or just collapsed. Can't remember one or the other. And when he gets out, he gets shot. And he tells the person who's with him, the actor does, like I said, I just am remembering the movie slightly. He's like, there's some people you just don't kill, and he's one of them. And while I'm conflicted about it because he's an enemy, I understand my enemy, but Georgios and I, that's why I wanted to have him on, have both met our enemies after our wars. And guess what? We got along with them. They were doing their job for their nation. We were doing our job. So I'm conflicted the same way because, yeah, he was working against us. He killed a lot of our people. But that doesn't mean that he wasn't doing that for his nation. And the one steadying thing he did have during the mining, everybody forgets the limpet mining of the different ships. I believe one was Dutch and one was Japanese with mines, the oil tankers. He was trying to keep the naval version of the Quds Force at bay. Yes, they kidnapped under Obama, under a weak leader, our Navy people in those boats. That's a fact. And they're now a museum there. But the greater question to me, and this is where I'm going to wrap up, George, and I want your input, brother. We know there's going to be retaliation. Now, this was not retaliation that we did. It was because of the embassy attack. Everybody kept saying it was just because of the contractor. That's bullshit. It was the embassy attack. But they also found out from that embassy attack when the Marines came in to save the embassy. They found out quickly that there were other attacks planned. That's a fact. And when they describe what he is, I always point out it's a combination of the CIA and ODA. That's what the Quds Force is in actuality. So now the greater question is, why are we still there? And in my opinion, let the Near East sort it out. Let them go to war and kill each other. Because in all honesty, there's no good excuse to be there. And with that being said, Georgios, I'll mute and I want to hear your rebuttal or your, admonitions, whatever you want to say, brother.
Well, I gotta, first of all, one thing you have to at least acknowledge is that since the Quds Force has taken over since Ayatollah Khomeini took over
in
Iran.
79. Right.
Now they are, right. They started becoming active in 1980, and they're the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Now, most of it, they're a special operations force. They are. Their strength is classified, but their estimate is at least anywhere from 10 to 15,000 members, or now they have some really interesting allies and some really interesting opponents as well. Now, they are, one of the things that they're allies with is Bosnia, and they were allies with Qatar, Serbia, and Bosnia and Herzegovina, but they were enemies of Egypt, Bahrain, United Arab Emirates, and Kuwait,
and Saudi Arabia.
Even though they're
Sunni, they're not Shia.
Right. Well, yeah, and so even though they're not, let's say that they're not, they're non-state. They are state actors. They had some allies that were non-state actors. So, you're talking about Hezbollah, and you're talking about some of the other groups that were, the PLO, the Islamic Jihad movement in Palestine. So they are, and then the RFAC in Colombia, which is the people the narco terrorists. Yeah. So they're a really interesting group. And here's the one thing that I will say about him. Even though, he is an enemy of the United States, he is an enemy of the Allied forces of America. He was also a moderate voice in some of the operations that have gone on, because I will say this: yes, he is a state actor, but at the same time, the form of terrorism, or the form of influence, let's say this, that non-state violence influence, was relatively programmable. There was a predictive analysis on it. Now, when are they going to retaliate, and are they going to retaliate with terrorist attacks, or are they going to do conventional attacks? And the problem has been Iran, for the most part, has not worked in the United States. They've not had any terrorist attacks or any terrorist coalitions in the United States or in North America, or even in South America. Most of their terrorism has been in the Pacific, in Indonesia, and in what is
Philippines and Malaysia.
The Malaysia, Philippines and Malaysia, and in the Arab Peninsula. But the Iranians have never carried out terrorist attacks in Europe. They've been limited to, their force projection is in that area. I don't know what is going to happen of this. I know that the left is upset that Trump did not contact them. Mayor Pete came out with he came out with a tweet that it doesn't even make sense. Um, and I think that part of it is saying what I was expecting to see is the following. Hey, Qasim Soleimani is dead. This is, an enemy of many different countries, and the opportunity arose. And I think that was the response that people should have took, not the response let's attack the president for taking out a
And
strategic
he was
military
a
target.
strategic military target. I mean, I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying, just like you said, he was a target that we knew how he thought. We had his psychological programs.
Right.
And it would be the same
Right.
if they took out the the head of special forces, SOG, and for all of the military, that general.
Like if they took out General McChrystal.
Yes,
like
if they took out General McChrystal and they took out the CIA chief. They already know how they think, so you know that's a known quantity.
Right, and part of the problem has been is that Iran as a whole is very isolationist, and partly because they're not a world city, they're not a good universal or world citizen. So a lot of the things that they do is to be in the control of the area. Now, my concern is as a whole. Um, my concern is that what does this what does this transition into? Because the devil, there's an old saying, the devil knows that it beats
exactly.
The devil you don't. When the Arab Spring rose up, one of the things that we looked at was we didn't know what they were going to be replaced with. We didn't know. You take a look at what happened in Egypt. Yeah, Mubarak was a horrible leader, but when you replaced him, it got worse. And then what happens next? What happens in what's the next step? Because, if we're going to sit there and play, worldwide, geopolitical geopolitical chess, what does it look like?
I definitely do. That's my thinking altogether too. You're caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's like the old joke that used to go around. What do you think of the asshole? And then the response is, I don't know. And somebody says, I think it's a shitty mess and it needs wiped out. But see, that's the whole problem. Is that entire area. I'm not excluding anywhere in the Near East. They're all shitholes. I don't care what country they are. And even if they're first world status, at this point, we've dumped so much blood and treasure over there. We're now self-sustaining, thanks to the president we have today, that we can provide for our own oil. But see, Europe can't. And so this can put a bind into Europe unless we're ready to pick up the mantle of Saudi Arabia. But in all honesty, I think at least with the Near East, until they get their shit together, we should become isolationist to them. And that's my thoughts. Just not do business with them. Fuck them.
Yeah, I mean, the problem, the problem is, well, we don't have and I mean, neither the left or the right has, neither the left or the right has a good foreign policy. I mean, we just don't. We don't know what we can describe our foreign policy. If we had Webster's dictionary and a thesaurus, I mean, we just don't. We don't have that.
8 years, depending on who's in power. And you're exactly right. We don't have a static foreign policy. And State Department, they actively work against U.S. policy.
Yeah, I mean, and there are times that let's take a look at let's put it like this: we're both in Somalia. Somalia could be it, they're in a position that they could have been an ally to us. We could have gone in there and nation build. We could have had a nice port. We could have had a place in Badoa. Badoa was big enough. Badoa could have Badoa could have been a huge military, base. I mean, they were big enough that even Kismaya had a huge, had a huge airport, and with a runway for even a C-5 Galaxy could have landed there. And the problem is we didn't have, Bill Clinton gets into office, and we don't have a very worthwhile, we don't have a very worthwhile foreign policy message. So I think the problem is that without having a foreign policy measure in place, anything we do in an area is always going to look like we're, saber rattling, and I think that's not either, exactly true.
My point is, right before Somalia happened under Bush Senior, during that era, we had an op going to Somalia to work with the Somali military because they actually had a standing army. And that was the Marine Corps. I believe your unit was even going to go. I know mine was.
Right.
Then Somalia went off the charts. I was out of the Corps, but I went back in just to help out my old unit. And I was lucky enough to get to go, but I wasn't there very long. And but that was port security, the port of Mogadishu. So the whole bullshit about it is, you're exactly correct. We got there when it was a failed state. And remember, that was right before the Gulf War happened that operation was planned. And we were all looking forward to it. We were going to go see Somalia, And we looked at pictures. Somalia looked really nice. And then what it looked like a couple years later. And not even a couple years later. You know what I'm saying? And Clinton didn't help shit. He made it worse.
Well, and I want you to, and let's take one, and for the people that are listening, I want you to take something into account. The reason there was a civil war in Somalia was because the president of Somalia in 1986 ran into the back of a bus.
Right.
That's why there was a civil war. It wasn't anything that was, a majority like, this happened because of this or this happened because of that. It was ideology. No, the reason it happened was because the president of Somalia, the prime minister, in 1986 ran into the back of the bus, and his motorcade he had to get airlifted out to Kenya, and there was no effective chain of command or order of secession.
So you had the military take control of the country, and that's what happened. And it became a military, and that's why we were going on that op, to help the military out, because there was an outright civil war, and that was during the time before the Gulf War broke out, and it got canceled, and a lot of people forget how the Gulf War happened. I believe her name was April Gillespie, who was the ambassador to Baghdad at that time, and she had met with Saddam Hussein right before he invaded Kuwait, and she said he told her, I'm going to have to go in and invade Kuwait, and she said that's an Arab to Arab matter. It does not matter to the U.S. On the second, when he invaded, first FSSG was put on standby, and by August 7th, we were lock, stock, and barrel in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The entire IMF. And that's a fact, historical.
Right. And think about this. And so, in May of 86, President Barr was, during a rainstorm, ran into the back of a bus. and then he was he was flighted out to Kenya, and then he was head over to Saudi Arabia, and that was one of the problems that he had, that there was no order of succession, and within in 5 years they went from they went to a democratic republic into a full blown civil war. And if you take a look at, and if you guys don't think that, you look at the listeners, me and Shuff aren't trying to, I don't know whatever you want to call the term, but we're trying to educate you here because, we've been deployed to some places that you look and see, well, how did they get here? And Somalia in 1979, 1980 had an air force, had an army, had a navy, and in the 11 short years,
it had farming,
all of that was gone.
It had a vital economy, and same thing with Afghanistan before the Russians. The women walked around without burqas. Under Saddam Hussein, like it or not, the women didn't have to be burqa'd up. And we've seen what the Department of State did in Benghazi in Libya when they basically killed I can't think of his name now, Gaddafi, and that was basically a hit by us. Every time we do it, it kind of fucks us in the ass, and I just don't think we need to monkey there anymore, brother. And that's my full feeling. Africa, look, the Chinese have Africa on lock. You know why? They don't have white guilt. They don't have to worry about what people think about what they do. And they treat those people where they're at in Africa like utter and complete, I don't want to say, there's words in English that used to be used in the 1800s.
Right, but they treat them, they treat them
slaves.
Serfs.
Yeah.
How about we use that one? Yeah. And I think that, I think probably one of the other things that people aren't taking into account, and I want bring this up as well, and maybe is there, because of culture, a lot of those African and the Arab Peninsula nations have always been very tribal, and they've been more tribal, and part of it is also too is that it is the one thing that people don't take a look at is that there's no homogenous Arab population. Qatar, all of them are, none of them are homogenous. Even Saudi Arabia,
they
they're
were
not
Bedouins.
Homogenous.
They were desert wanderers. Right. That's look, when you go and look back to the times, and back in before World War One and during the time, and you had certain British generals over there, and British officers mobilizing the Saudis, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. I'll never forget when we got there. We were joking around about our country being young and us thinking this is an ancient country. And Captain Khalid was the first one to correct me. He goes, our country's about 35 years old at that time. He said, because we were made up of all these different tribes, and it wasn't until King Fahd and his father rode around on horseback and in vehicles and pulled every tribe together to make Saudi Arabia. And of course they fell on oil, and the rest is history. And the same thing with Qatar, same thing with Dubai, UAE. So, Yemen, but Yemen at one time was divided north and south, the north being free and the south, and I could have it reversed, so please correct me in the comments if I've got it reversed. I believe the south was communist. So that was Cold War era.
Are you talking about Yemen?
You're talking about, yeah.
Are you talking about Yemen?
At one time.
You know what? I don't, honestly, and this is the thing, I don't remember, because I think it was in Yeah, you're right. Socialist state, satellite state of the Soviet Union up until 1990. So you are right.
Well, I
Yemen
know
Um,
I'm right,
was
but
but Yemen was, um, but one of the things about Yemen is five different countries.
yes, it's
It's
not
not one
homogeneous.
country.
You're
It's not
right.
one.
But the yeah,
Yeah, and the people that are in the what let's just call them the intercoastals, which is the ones that are closer to Eritrea, and they're Somalians. Now, the ones that are north, where it goes to Oman and Kuwait, they're a different tribe. So they are Somalians. They don't call themselves Somalian, but um, they are whatever you want to call them. They're literally um,
Yemenis,
they
right?
are a well, they're not
Right,
Yemenis.
but
They're
I'm
actually
saying
just
they all
Somalians.
are considered Yemenis now. So, and the Arabs used to
Right.
have a derogatory term they used for blacks from that area, and it was ashfud, if I remember the correct terminology in Arabic. But that's beside the point. There's an island there too. A gentleman asked me on the boiler room one night to check into it. I can't think of the name of the island, but it's right there, smack dab in between. And when there was a North and a South Yemen, it's right in the Gulf, and that little island was always neutral. It's actually a fascinating little island if you look at it. I just can't think of the name of it right now. It's eluding me, and I don't want to tie the show up with that. But yeah, see, geopolitics in that area is a motherfucker, and it's just not worth our time anymore. In
Right.
all honesty, I mean, Israel can fend for itself. Israel's been a country long enough, and it is what it is. And honestly, the way I look at it, the neocons and neoprogs, progressives, have one thing in their mind, and that's they want war over there. I have no idea why, but Russia, and this as well as I do, has more land mass than all of the United States, including Alaska. Yeah, probably if we had Alaska and Canada
Right.
combined, we'd probably have the same land mass. The problem is we don't, and we don't have the same population or anything else. And Russians are just
Well,
harder people too.
the
That's
I
that's a sad fact that nobody wants to look at. Is Russians are just fucking hard people, and we now have a bunch of Nancy
well,
boys.
their geography makes them that way because they've had to endure a lot of things, and it's just um, one of the problems that going back to one of the problems with Iran is right now they are um, they are just unbelievable. Um, how much um, one of the problems that they're having is how much their national identity, and they just don't have a national identity because the old um, I don't know what you want to call it, the old guard or
Under the
the
Shah,
old
they were
the
nationalistic, and they did have a national identity. And since Khomeini came in,
yeah,
it
but
got all
now
fucked up into an Islamic identity, and you know, the, it's the Sunni Shia split. And
well, it's not just that. Is that a lot of the here's one of the things that has happened in Iran that nobody is speaking about, and we're going to have to address it in the next couple of years. Is that when they had the Iraqi or the Iran-Iraq war, a lot of the males of that country
right,
were killed off, and one of the things that happened with that is the fact that with um, with that, you have a very young population who isn't going to, they're not going to temple. They're
you
not
mean
going
mosque, right?
to,
I know what you mean.
they're having well, no, I mean, they're not going to the mosque, but, you can call them temples or whatever, but they're not going to that. And, um, they're not going to they're not going to, they're not as religious fervor as at all. The problem with it, with their, the country is having a hard time with the hardliners trying to keep them, the younger generation who doesn't want, they don't want to be Muslims. They just want to be non-secular.
Well, see, we
Um,
even helped
you know,
foment that with the Green Revolution, which Obama had no problem with the Arab Spring and all the other bullshit that Hillary was pushing over there in that shithole area. Had no problem helping them, and even helped ISIS. And anybody who disbelieves this, just look up who funded ISIS. It was USIS. It was the U.S. It was the C-fucking-I-A, because they were going against Bashar Assad because they had a thorn up their ass about him. Because he was Ba'athist like fucking Saddam was. And that's what gave them the thorn with Bush Jr. and Bush Sr. about Saddam. So these are facts. And then you look at this thing. They have their Green Revolution. We helped to foment that for years. And when it finally came to fruition under Obama, he didn't help them. And those people that wanted to be secularist, wanted to break the spell of the Khomeinis, when they wanted to get rid of all the Islamist crap. What'd they do? They didn't do a fucking thing to help them, and then they got slaughtered in the streets. So
right.
we don't have clean hands
Right.
in that area. And to say that he was a terrorist is I got to link back to what we were originally talking about. Makes as much sense as when they said Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi was an austere religious scholar. That was a retarded right. thing, and the Washington
right.
Post, I've got it posted right here, their little headline of it. And the one today, here's what they said about him, and I don't believe this either. He did, but Special Forces trains people every fucking day that do horrible shit in the name of democracy and freedom. And that's okay. I get it. That's our ideology, and I get it too, because I do like that kind of ideology. But the fact is, they wrote, this is what WAPO wrote, and this is the left-leaning that you were talking about earlier. Breaking news, airstrike at Baghdad airport kills Iran's most revered military leader, Qasem Soleimani. Iraqi state television reports. Revered military leader. Iran's most revered. Well, in a way that's true. Just like if they would have killed General McChrystal. But General McChrystal was in charge of ODA and SF. That's our SF. And the same thing with the CIA funding, Islamic State. So, where's our consistency in policy? We didn't have one. We do now. But even that is frangible, if you know what I mean. I want some feedback on this on the real.
Yeah, I think that part of the problem with this is that you just don't have a consensus, and I think there's just no consensus on when you're talking about Islamic leader and I just don't understand some of the things. Like how the left is now, there are people that are defending Iran on this.
Right.
It just, I just don't understand it anymore. And I think here's the one thing that also is just confused. Let's just say, I don't know what word to use, but let's say confusing, right? Is that you have people out there, right, that are that don't understand that it just seems it's cold to side with the people trying to kill you.
The left got used to 8 years of having an anti-American president, and our colleges and our elementary schools have been doing nothing but push that America is bad, that white people are bad, black people that are American are bad. When people want to talk about race and all this bullshit, it's all about division. But the point being, And I've run into those morons too that love to claim shit about everybody. Everybody's a fucking Nazi. Who gives a fuck? My point is, the greater point is, we used to coalesce as Americans. 9/11 is a prime example. You and I were both around during that time, and we saw people opening doors for each other. People were friendlier. It lasted for about a week. Even in New York, people were saying crimes went down. Everybody was like, "What's the next shoe to drop?" And guess what we're doing now? We're at each other's throats. Like we forgot all about that. You know why we forgot about that? Because our children now, who were born during that time and weren't old enough to see what it really means, they also never had a Russian bear or a communist threat. They're embracing communism, embracing Islam, which they have no clue about. They can say, "Oh, I read this, I know about it." Shut the fuck up. Until you've lived there for a while, you don't know what that fucking place is about. And we just have the idiots running the asylum thanks to 8 years of BHO.
I gotta tell you this. I gotta tell you this. I said this to you before, and me and you have argued, talked about this. My dad during the 50s fought the communists in Greece, right? And him and along my uncle and a couple other people here in Columbus. One of the guys is wearing a Che shirt and defending Che, and he unfriended me when I said, "Your dad fought the communists. If he saw you wearing a Che shirt, he would beat you fucking sideways."
Yeah, I know who you're talking about because fortunately, I met your family when I was a kid.
And I think the problem is that the problem with everything that is going on is that you have so many people just do not understand what they're I don't know what they're enabling, and I think part of it is they think that they're the cool kids.
Oh, I agree with that wholeheartedly. 110%. It's all about social signaling now. I mean, all you got to do is look at this bullshit culture where Me Too started it, political correctness started it, and now everybody's out trying to out political correct each other. When you have 72 different genders now, different sexes. Wait, no, there's male and female.
No, hold on.
There's
hold on. In California, there are 32
I've seen it
genders.
Up to 72. It's gotten even more ridiculous, bro. I saw a whole dude. It was fucking like 12 pages long. I'm not bullshitting you. Z, zer, he, zers, up, A, E, I, O, U, sometimes Y. It makes no sense. But this is the kind of madness that cultural Marxism brings. And that's been put out by academia, in all honesty. And that's problematic that we've allowed our colleges. Think about it. When you went to college, when I went to school, we did not have people pushing a political agenda much on us. And, OSU is pretty liberal college. You know that, and I know that. But it wasn't as bad as it is today. Now they have gender studies, female studies, all these studies. Social studies was where it started to go wrong. When we quit teaching civics and started teaching social studies, that's where we fucked the pooch at that point. Anybody that never went through civics in school will never have an appreciation for America.
Well, I think the problem. I think the problem is that the left is and one of the things that that people are not taking into account is that that they don't understand what the left is, they don't understand what oppressive regimes are. and because of that, they've had it too easy here, and I just don't understand. I don't understand the I don't know what the right term is, the infatuation with being the outliers. Like, oh, it's cool to be a communist, or communist just hasn't really worked. Real communist. I mean, it's just that when they say that, real communism hasn't, is what they're saying
Yeah,
is I'm
and
much
they
smarter
are
than
the
you are.
ones that can make it work when it's been tried numerous
So
times.
I gotta say something, and this is, and I don't mean to cut you off, but this is what's very poignant, and I don't know much longer you want to go to, but I wanted to point something out, okay? And so yesterday, which is a very important day, um, Goldman Sachs and Wall Street have come out with a projection to say in the next 26 months there's absolutely no sign of recession, none whatsoever. Okay, and people attacked that, and I said, and there was so many people. Oh my God, it's Trump bash. They attacked Trump, and they were saying, oh, it's just made up. Here's the thing: the model that they used, and this is not going, is a regular general. It's called GAAP accounting, general accounting principles model, and people on the left, even Krugman, who and Robert Reich, who I'm not a fan of, have agreed with it, but because it was against their like sense of what do you call it? Their
Right.
sense of identity. They just went, the comment section made you think that it was written by autistic kids. That's how bad it was. And what they've done is they've abolished, or they've gone away from the what is normally accounted principles of politics, religion, science. They've just abandoned that. Like, well, the right doesn't believe in global warming. Well, y'all don't know which bathroom to
Well, not
use.
just
Okay,
that.
we're
Not
even.
just that. You have insanity on both sides of the aisle, where people don't believe we went to the moon. They don't believe the Earth is round; it's flat. That's what some say. I believe. Look, George, you and I need to push this because it's the truth about how the Earth is shaped. It's a cone, like an ice cream cone. It's hollow in the middle. That's where we live. On the outside, it sort of pulls itself inside out and it's constantly spinning. That's the fake gravity. And so we get when that cone hits that sun and all the stars are just painted on in the middle somewhere. So we see it down there at that infinity of that little cone. And that's our fake night. So this is how we actually see the world is we live in a cone. We're not round, we're not spherical, we're not flat either with the polar ice rim. We are actually in a cone, an ice cream cone. Can you get around that? That explains travel time. That explains everything because everything's consistent, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's get on that. The
Yeah.
cone theory, man. Cone Earth.
Yeah. And what is and it's just like it is just like what we talked about the other day, right? That one of the things that we talked about was the um, that one of the things that we talked about is people who we were talking about printing. We're talking about people that have never been in those situations. They don't know what it sounds like. You know what I mean? They try to, they try to they try to basically bullshit their way in a situation. It's just like when you run into somebody that's
Right.
stolen valor. They don't know what they're saying because they've never been in that situations. You know, and it's the same thing with people in geopolitics. When they don't know what they're saying, it just sounds really stupid in um, it's just like, Rose McGowan. Have you seen her tweet
Oh
about
yeah, her
Iran?
multiple tweets where she tried to say she was a Republican at the end of it, saying, "And I'm not going to vote for them, and I'm not going to vote for the." It was retarded how she tried. It was that's a prime example of social signaling. It's just like with geopolitics, man. Going through Arabic studies, one of the courses I took, never forget it. This prof is telling us what the Palestinian world looks like, this, that, and the other, and of course he's anti-Jewish, of course, blah blah blah. And I asked him, I said, so when have you ever visited, the Near East? And most Americans will say the Middle East, but I've lived there and I know that it's not referred to that by anybody but us. And he goes, well, I've not had the pleasure yet, but I plan on going to Palestine soon. I said, so you're going to Israel? Well, it's Palestine. And I'm like, so you actually don't know anything about the Arab culture. And yet he was a professor, dude. He
Right.
hadn't even traveled. He was a bullshit artist, but he claimed to be it was Arabic studies. That was it. And he claimed to be an expert on something that he's never been to. That'd be like me saying, huh?
I had I had a lunch. I got to tell you, I was in Haifa, and I've had in Israel. I had lunch with a Christian, a Muslim, and a Jew. And
Did the Christian come
I
in
mean,
with a
seriously,
cat into the bar?
no, no, they didn't come in with a cat. They came in with halva.
Okay.
They didn't come in with a cat. But the point that I'm saying is they didn't. There's
Oh yeah.
multiculturalism in Israel, and the idea that and I've had a chance to train with some of the Israeli athletes, and we've had really good training there. The point of it is that if you people's view of the world is based on what they don't
Right.
know. Um, like I mean, me and you disagree on this, but if you go to Germany, there's a lot of it's not Germany isn't homogenous. And here's the thing: if you take a look at just something as simple as German cuisine, what you get in Thuringia is not the
No,
same
that's
as you get
fact.
off
That's
the
fact.
coast. You know, and beer and you've corrected me on this. Hefeweizen, it doesn't taste the same if you go closer to the Polish area as it does
Right.
in Munich. It's a different, you know, it's a different taste, and it's the same thing with like if you're in the United States, it's the difference between Southern whiskey and Northern whiskey. They're not the same. Southern bourbon. Well,
Hell
Kentucky's the only
yeah.
place that
Hell
makes bourbon,
yeah.
but when you but it's those kind of nuances is what people don't have. They don't have those conversations. So as a result, they don't know the difference. They don't know that. And it's just like I was in Cyprus one time and I saw these two guys got into a fight at my cousin's restaurant, and this is 1992. And I asked him, well, why are you guys arguing? Well, one was Sunni, the other one was Shia. And I said, how do you guys know the difference? Oh, we could tell when they pray.
That's a fact. Yeah.
I was like,
That's a fact.
whoa. Yeah, and they were about to have an afternoon meal, and they started an exchange that went from a little bit of antagonism to a full out they're throwing hands. And I asked the one guy that I was like, how did you even what was it? And the guy says we can tell the difference just when they pray. So people that are not exposed to those levels or have never seen them, it's easy for them to get into arguments over what they don't know. And I think that is what's going on in America today, is people feel the need to have an opinion even on things they
Exactly. No,
don't know about.
you are preaching to the choir with me, brother. I mean, I've been called everything but a white boy and sometimes even a Nazi. It doesn't matter to me. It doesn't. Here's the thing, bro. You've known me forever. Everybody's known me forever. It doesn't bother me, and that's the whole point. You know, a lot of people think name calling and oh, we're gonna ostracize you, we're gonna deplatform you, we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. I've seen it all and had it all tried on me now, and they've given it their best shot and they fell. And the reason why is they don't know the intent. They don't know what the fuck I do and why I do it, and that's fine. You know everything because you've been a brother of mine since I was fucking 14.
Right, but I mean, but the problem is it's just that it's the same argument that if you don't understand what something looks like, if you don't understand what something looks like, then you are then it's easy for you
It's
to come up
five
with
blind men trying to explain what a rose looks like.
right.
That's exactly what it is.
Right.
And see, that's the whole fucked up point about this whole thing, man. Is it is based on ignorance. It's based on ignorance by everybody, including me. You know, the only thing I'm the foremost expert on is my own fucking opinion. And that's it. And you say the same shit to me. You know your shit on the economy and on economics. That's not a bullshit thing. I always divert to you.
Right.
I know.
And the problem and the problem that I and the problem that I said is that you at the time that you come out with a that you come out with an opinion, just because you have an opinion doesn't mean that it's a valid one.
I'm listening. Keep going, bro.
And well, and I think that and I think that's what I think that's what I think that's one of the problems that you have today is that people think that that their opinion has validity, even though they don't know what their even though they think that they because they have a they have an opinion that it has merit, and that is one of the problems that we're seeing in this that is going on right now.
Well, no, they don't want a meritocracy because that's racist, don't you know? I mean, honestly, that's your white privilege, even though you're Greek and of olive skin. You know, it's nonsense, dude. I mean, when I've had a black gentleman on my program too, and people have said this, that, and the other about him, and I'm like, guys, he's a black dude. And
right, and even though right, and even though it's just like and they use so many attack words anymore that okay, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a Trumpster or whatever. Okay, fine. Is that all you got?
Exactly.
Thanks. And I think that's. I mean, okay, you're done. Are you done calling me names? Fine. I'll see you on the flip side.
Exactly.
I mean, it is. It is.
Yep. I think we're getting a little bit of over talk because there must be a delay. We've overshot.
Well, I just think, we've covered everything.
Okay, cool.
But I want to close with this. I will say this. I will say this. There are some really evil people in the world, and there's no negotiating with them. There's no talking to them. There's no having conversations, being empathetic of their cause. You just literally have to kill them. And that is something that people who have put rounds down range will know. It is a conflict of ideologies that sometimes people have to be killed. And as bad as that sounds, it is what keeps
Yeah.
society civilized.
It keeps
And
that thin veneer, that little thing that's less than a curtain that can be broken with a breath that we like to call civility in the West. And that's what keeps it from being broken. Brother, preach on this because I know where you're going.
and the issue with it is that people is that people um in order to in um in order um to have debates, you have to see the the you have to have a big comprehension of the world, and most people are small minded that they don't know what the world looks like, and as a result, they don't understand that you cannot negotiate with people whose ideology is either to kill you or to make you subversive to their cause.
That's the end of
That that's
the
that
debate.
that's the end of
You
the
nailed
debate.
it.
That's
You
the
nailed
last
it,
word I
brother,
have
as
with
you
this
always
debate.
do. With that being said, folks, Georgios and I, when we get together, we solve all the problems of the world. And guess what? Nobody gives a fuck. But thank you for stopping by Kaiser's Castle, sitting on my big orange couch. I will slowly raise that drawbridge and give you time to finish your coffee, tea, soda, or adult libation. With that being said, shuff out.